There is a wasp nest somewhere on your property that you have been thinking about dealing with. It might be the papery grey structure growing under the eave of your shed roof, or the entry hole in the soil of your lawn where workers disappear and reappear with a regularity that has started to feel threatening, or the small beginning of something in the corner of your garage that you noticed last week and have been meaning to address before it becomes something larger. And your instinct about this nest, whatever form it takes, is almost certainly the same instinct that most people bring to any wasp nest they discover on their property. It needs to go soon, and the longer you leave it, the worse the problem will become. Before you buy the foam, before you call the pest controller, before you do anything at all, I want you to understand what is actually inside that nest, what is happening in it right now, and why the case for leaving it alone is considerably stronger than almost anything you have been told about wasps. Today we are going to go inside that nest together. We are going to look at what it is made of, who is running it, what the tens of thousands of individuals inside it are actually doing, and why the ecological services being performed by the colony inside that papery structure on your shed eave represent a contribution to the health of your garden, your local food chain, and the broader ecosystem that no commercially available product, no pest control treatment, and no alternative insect can replicate at the same scale and efficiency. We are also going to look at the thing that most people most want to know. What is the actual risk? What does aggressive wasp behavior actually require to trigger? And what is the realistic danger that this nest poses to you and your household for the majority of the season during which it will be active? By the end, I think you will understand why entomologists and ecologists who study Vespula vulgaris and Vespula germanica consistently argue that the wasp nest most homeowners destroy, without hesitation, is one of the most productive and ecologically significant structures in the domestic landscape. Let us start with what the nest is made of, because understanding the material changes how you see the colony that built it. The papery grey structure of a social wasp nest is not a found material or a secreted wax like honeybee comb. It is manufactured. The workers of the colony collect raw wood fiber from fence posts, dead tree branches, untreated timber, and any other exposed wood surface they can access, chew it into a pulp combined with saliva, and then apply it to the nest surface in thin overlapping layers that dry into a material with properties that human engineers have spent decades trying to replicate. It is lightweight, structurally rigid, thermally insulating, water resistant, and manufactured at room temperature from a locally sourced renewable material by an insect whose brain is the size of a sesame seed. The grey color and the distinctive surface pattern of the nest, those overlapping scales that make it look like a strange grey pine cone, come from the different wood sources used by different foraging workers, each bringing a slightly different color of fiber from a slightly different location, and each deposit visible in the finished structure as a layer of slightly different tone. The nest is not just a shelter. It is a geological record of the wood available within foraging range of that colony. Inside the outer envelope are the cones, horizontal layers of hexagonal cells arranged in tiers, pointing downward rather than upward as in a honeycomb, because wasp larvae are held in the cells vertically rather than horizontally. In a mature colony at peak season, in late summer, that nest will contain between 5,000 and 15,000 individual workers, depending on the species and the season's conditions. It will also contain the single queen who founded it the previous spring from a single overwintered female, who built the first cells alone, laid the first eggs alone, provisioned the first larvae alone, and survived the entire founding phase on fat reserves she had built up the previous autumn before overwintering. Every individual in that colony is her daughter. The entire structure, its engineering, its population, its complex division of labor, is the product of a founding event that began in one insect. The workers are doing several things simultaneously that the nest's threatening appearance almost entirely obscures. They are hunting. In terms of the sheer volume of invertebrate prey that a mature wasp colony removes from the surrounding environment over a season, nothing in the domestic garden comes close. A colony of common wasps at peak population will capture and process several hundred grams of insect prey per week, the vast majority of which consists of caterpillars, aphids, flies, beetles, and other soft-bodied invertebrates that are at various stages of eating your garden. The wasp does not eat these prey items
certainly
herself.
provokes a fear response.
She
But we need
chews
to
them
examine the
into a
context of what the
protein
actual
paste,
risk is when these workers are simply
carries
going
the
about their day.
paste back to the nest, and feeds it directly into the open mouths of the developing larvae in the comb. Every foraging trip a worker makes is a pest control run. Every caterpillar she removes from a leaf, every aphid colony she dismantles, every blowfly she catches mid-air is one fewer pest completing its life cycle in your garden, and the colony is running hundreds of these foraging runs simultaneously across an area that can extend several hundred meters from the nest entrance in every direction. Now here is the part that will matter most to you as someone who has a vegetable patch, ornamental borders, or fruit trees anywhere within a few hundred meters of that nest. Researchers studying common wasp foraging behavior have found that a single mature colony can remove the equivalent of several kilograms of invertebrate prey from the surrounding environment over the course of a full season. Several kilograms of caterpillars, aphids, flies, and beetles removed from your garden by a colony you were planning to destroy with expanding foam on a Tuesday evening. The common wasp is, by any objective measure of pest removal efficiency, one of the most effective biological control agents that has ever colonized a domestic garden. And it does this for free, without chemicals, without residue, without any planning on your part, for the entire duration of its season,
The worker
which
returns
runs
with a
from
protein
spring
pellet, the product
establishment
of a
through
successful
late
hunting
summer,
run. The predator
the
mid-operation.
exact period during which your vegetable garden is most vulnerable to the invertebrate pests. The wasp is hunting. Let that settle for a moment. The structure you have been meaning to deal with is actively protecting your garden in ways that require significant financial investment to replicate with commercial alternatives, and cannot be replicated at all at the same efficiency by any single alternative intervention. The wasps in your nest are also doing something that most people know about in the abstract, but consistently underestimate in its ecological significance. They are pollinating. Not with the efficiency of a honeybee and not with the specialized precision of a bumblebee, but across an extraordinary breadth of plant species that neither of those insects regularly services. Wasps visit flowers for nectar throughout the season, and their body structure, less hairy than bees and therefore less efficient at carrying pollen, is nonetheless sufficient to transfer pollen between flowers during feeding visits. The plants most dependent on wasp pollination are generally those with shallow, open flowers that provide easy nectar access without requiring specialized bee anatomy to enter, and many of these plants are common garden and wild species whose pollination needs are not fully met by the bee populations available to them. In late summer and autumn, as bee populations decline and the wasp colony reaches its own seasonal end, wasps become an increasingly significant pollinator in many temperate garden environments, visiting ivy flowers, late-blooming perennials, and autumn-fruiting plants at a point in the season when almost no other pollinators remain active. The sting risk, the thing that drives almost every decision to destroy a wasp nest, deserves the most precise and honest examination it is ever given. The common wasp, Vespula vulgaris, can sting, and unlike the honeybee, it can sting multiple times because its sting is not barbed in a way that causes it to be torn from the body on deployment. For individuals with a venom allergy, a sting represents a genuine medical risk that warrants carrying appropriate emergency medication and taking proportionate precautions around nest sites. This is a real and serious risk for the people to whom it applies, and it should be treated as such. For the significant majority of people who do not have a venom allergy, a wasp sting is painful, causes a localized reaction, and resolves without medical intervention. The critical point that almost all discussion of wasp nest risk omits is the relationship between proximity, disturbance, and sting behavior. A wasp colony during the main foraging season, from spring through midsummer, is not looking for things to sting. The workers are focused almost exclusively on foraging, nest maintenance, and larval provisioning. They will sting in defense of the nest if the nest is directly disturbed, if a worker is physically trapped or threatened, or if a person stands directly over the nest entrance and creates sustained vibration. They will not sting because you walked past the nest, because you noticed it, or because you are somewhere in the general vicinity of it going about ordinary garden activity. The aggressive behavior most people associate with wasps, the apparently unprovoked stinging in late summer and autumn, occurs for a reason that changes the entire picture once you understand it. In late summer, as the colony approaches the end of its annual cycle, the queen stops laying worker eggs and begins laying male eggs and new queen eggs. The larvae in the comb at this stage are fed differently, and the colony ceases to need the protein supply that the workers have been hunting all season. With no larvae to provision, the workers have no requirement to hunt and no nutritional need to return to the nest. They become, for the first time in their lives, nutritionally self-interested, and they seek carbohydrates, sweet substances, the ripe fruit, and sugary drinks that autumn provides. This is the wasp of August and September that lands on your jam and ruins your outdoor lunch. But it is not the same behavioral state as the midsummer colony at peak function, and understanding the difference changes the risk assessment completely. A nest encountered in June or July, during active foraging season, is considerably less likely to produce a defensive response to casual proximity than almost any popular account of wasp danger suggests. What you should actually do about the wasp nest on your property depends on one thing. Where is it? A nest in a wall cavity or roof space, where the entry point is inside a living space, presents a legitimate practical problem that may require professional management. Because the risk of workers finding their way into the interior of the building is real, and the nest cannot be managed from the outside. A nest in a shed, under an eave, in a log pile, or in the soil of a garden border that you do not need to access during the active season presents a very different situation. Leave it, walk past it, watch it from a distance if you are curious. A wasp nest in an outdoor location that is not directly in your path, or directly beside an area of sustained human activity, is not a threat that requires action. It is a pest control service that is running itself. What you should never do is destroy an active colony during the main foraging season without a genuine safety reason. Not because the wasp colony will cause you harm if you leave it, it almost certainly will not, but because you will be ending, mid-season, a pest removal operation that was actively working on behalf of your garden, eliminating a pollination service that no alternative insect is providing at that breadth or at that point in the season, and removing from your local ecosystem one of the most efficient invertebrate predators in the temperate world, for the sole reason that the structure it lives in looks alarming and the insect itself has a reputation that is dramatically out of proportion to its actual behavior in the outdoor environment. Every wasp colony ends on its own. By November, in most temperate climates, the colony will have ceased activity entirely, the workers will have died, and the nest will be empty and will never be reused. The new queens produced in late summer will have mated, left the colony, found a suitable overwintering site, and each one will found a completely new colony in a completely new location the following spring. The structure on your shed eave is not a permanent installation. It is a single season's occupation by a single colony, and its natural end requires no intervention from you whatsoever. Have you ever found a wasp nest on your property and left it, and noticed what happened over the course of the season? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one, and this is exactly the kind of story this community was built for. And if you want to understand another colonial insect whose reputation is almost entirely incompatible with its actual behavior in your garden, the next video is already waiting for you.